Welcome to the show Between Two Worlds, where we are interviewing guests from all over the world who have experienced a near-death experience. And this is a brand new series, and today we are joined by a very special guest by the name of Raymond O'Brien, who I interviewed 2 years ago. And this man, he not only died once, not twice, but 10 times in one night. He then left this physical plane, saw the light, experienced something very amazing, and is here back to tell us the story. But I've already interviewed him previously, which is already on YouTube, and today we're going to talk to him about a new experience that he had following from that night. Welcome, Raymond. How are you doing?
Oh, really well, thank you, Amit. First thing I'd like to say is thank you for asking me back.
No, you're very welcome.
You've been reaching a lot of people, thank you.
No, you're very welcome. So the last time we spoke, which was 2 years ago in Birmingham, and you shared with us your experience of that night, which we've already got on YouTube. And following from that experience, another event happened.
Yes, yeah.
Talk to me about that.
It's an event that I haven't really spoken about a lot. I came out of hospital, first time I went in, first time I had the near-death, and I ended up in a hospital called St George's in London. And I ended up there because I collapsed at my doctor's surgery approximately 6 weeks after. I had some stents fitted into my heart. I was taken into St George's Hospital, but they couldn't find a bed for me. So I hung around for maybe an hour or so, and eventually a bed was found. It was a little small bedded unit. And I was shown to my bed, which was close to the window. I had a wonderful view over the Houses of Parliament. But in the bed opposite me, the curtains were drawn. So I sat on the edge of my bed and just waited. And I heard these two men talking from behind the curtains. And one man said, "I'm a very, very spiritual person. So it's a real pleasure to meet you." The curtain spun back. A vicar appeared and he walked off the ward. And the vision that was before me was a man who I later called Fred the Angel. He'd done a lot of work with Harry Edwards, one of the really well-renowned healers. But what stunned me the most about this man is in my first experience, when I was on the other side, when I first had my visit into heaven, there was 2 men and 3 women. The 2 men were here, the 3 women were here, and I stood back and I watched all of this scene unfold before me. So there was this chap, grey hair, grey beard, reading a tan-coloured book. So you just need to bear that in mind. When the curtains came back, my first visit at St George's, there in that bed was Fred the Angel. Now he looked exactly the same as the man who I'd met on the other side. Wow. He even had in his hand the brown book that I'd seen on the other side. Wow. So yeah, I was absolutely stunned.
This is the man that you met in the hospital.
Yeah.
How long were you in the hospital before you met him?
I was in the hospital probably just a few hours.
And you met this person, Fred.
Yes.
And this is the gentleman that you met on the other side.
On the other side.
When you had your first experience.
Yes, yeah.
And how long was this experience from the first experience when you died 10 times in one night?
It was approximately 6 weeks.
6 weeks after.
So everything was still very fresh. I still remember the man vividly from the first time that I was on the other side. As I stood there, just as a soul, observing these 5 beautiful beings, or angels. I remember one of the women leant forward, she smiled at me, and she whispered, "Raise here." And as she whispered, "Raise here," I felt myself float to the old man's shoulder. And that's when I spotted this book. And he didn't even look up from the book. All I heard him say was, "He shouldn't be here."
Wow.
With a wave of his hand, that's when I came round in the back of the ambulance. So his face and the other 3 women were kind of branded into my memory. And there I was in St George's Hospital 6 weeks later. When the curtain got peeled back, And there was the old man sitting there with this book that he was reading from. It turned out that he was a well-renowned spiritualist, a very God-fearing person. So I felt at home with him immediately. I went over to him. I went over to him with my flew his bag and wheeled over to him, stood by the side of his bed, and I said, "I'm really pleased to meet you. I couldn't help but overhear you saying to the vicar that you was a very religious man, and you write a lot of poetry, and I'm a healer too." And he looked at me as if he'd seen a ghost. So we spoke. We spoke about why I was here. He told me that he too was a registered healer, and it turned out that he knew people that I knew, and I found that just incredible. Phenomenal, yeah.
So the second time when you went to heaven,
yeah,
or the planes above, we call it, what was that experience like?
It wasn't like the first experience. It was very fractured. About the fourth day into being in St George's Hospital, as I got to know Fred, the angel, much more, he called me over. He was a D-Day veteran. He called me over to the side of his bed and he said, "Tell me about your experiences, Ray." So I started telling him about what happened to me, and he asked me, "Do you know what's wrong with me?" Because I come from a family of seers. So I asked, "Do you know what's wrong with you?" And he said, "Well, they haven't taken me away for tests yet." He said, "They will in a few days." So they took him away for tests. It took him about 24, 48 hours for him to recover from these tests. He then called me over, he beckoned me over to his bed. I wheeled my thing back over to the side of his bed again. And he said, "Tell me again what was wrong with me, Ray." So I told him. He nodded. As I stood next to him, he put his right hand up and he held my left hand, and I was standing next to him. He said, "Ray, am I going to die?" And I couldn't answer him, Amit. And I think because I couldn't answer him, that was the answer in itself, to be quite honest. And he shook my hand. He went, "Remember something, Ray, please." He said, "Don't stay in this country. Become an international healer. Do what you do. Give your message to everyone. Don't stay here in the UK." And I couldn't see how I was going to do that. Then it was my turn to be called up to the operating theatre. Guy turned up with a wheelchair, got into the wheelchair. He was from New Zealand. He said he had heard about my experience in the first hospital. He'd also heard that I sometimes see things on people. So as he's wheeling me to the lift, he's mentioned this to me, and I've asked him. I said, "I've been told that you're a runner." And he said, "How do you know that?" I said, "Your soul has spoken to me." I said, "But you don't run because you've hurt your right ankle." He went, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, that's correct." And he was about to ask me more, but the lift doors went open. You know what it's like here in the UK. We don't talk in lifts. No. So I got wheeled in there. Up we went to the floor. I got dropped off outside the operating theatre, and he disappeared. They put me onto the operating theatre. There was 2 cardiac surgeons and 2 other staff. One was doing he was watching the computer screen. And I said to the consultants, "This is not going to go well." And he went, don't you worry about that, Ray." He said, it'll be okay." He said, "We've got 2 of the finest heart surgeons here." Told me what they was going to do. And I lay there and I just waited. One of the theatre staff was a lady she was from New Zealand as well, funnily enough. She said, "Ray, I heard that you were a heating tech before, so I'm waiting for everything to be done." I said, "Yeah, that's right." She said, "I have something wrong with my boiler." And I thought, here in the operating theatre? So we discussed what was wrong and so calmed down, and they started to work. So they injected me with something, and at that moment I'd watched the guy at the computer screen get agitated, and the next thing I've heard is, "We have to stop, Ray. We'll be back in a minute." So they disappeared out of the operating theatre, and I remembered that I felt very frightened, and I didn't want to be here anymore. So I thought I would try the same trick that I tried in the back of the ambulance. Put my chin to my shoulder, and waited for death to come again. But it didn't come. What came next was Fred's face. It must have been 5 feet in diameter, and he came out of the wall.
And this is the guy, Fred is the guy that you've seen in the hospital,
Yes.
in the physical plane,
Yeah.
with the tan book.
Yes, yes.
And so when you put your head to one side, you then, Fred's face appears in the astral plane.
Yes, yes. He pointed a finger at me, and he went, "No, you don't. You're not doing that this time." The surgeons came back, and they said, we can't carry on, Ray. We're worried because of your heart disease, that if we do something, you'll bleed to death. So we're going to have to stop where we are. We can't do no more than that. And that was basically, got wheeled back downstairs. I was in a bad way when they wheeled me back. About 24 hours it took me to recover. I heard Fred say to us on this normal plane, he went, "When they wheeled you back, Ray, we thought we'd lost you. When you wheeled back into this ward, your mouth was open. He went, you look like a dead man." And I said, "Well, I felt like a dead man, to be honest with you, Fred."
Wow. And why do you think, I mean, obviously having time to reflect on it, why do you think you saw Fred in the astral plane? Is that brought a message to you or something?
Yes, Fred was, I think from the last time that we did our first program, Amit, you asked me a question. You asked me, did I believe in God? And I was hesitant about my answer to you because I felt, what's the word I'm looking for? I felt a little bit persecuted. So I said yes to you, but on the inside I still didn't fully believe. So it was Fred who was the man who changed my way. And he's had a profound impact on me.
Wow. So now having these experiences, it's been 2 years since we last spoke.
Mm-hmm.
How has this changed your life now, having these experiences?
It's given me such an insight into the help which isn't there, particularly for us survivors, anyone who's not just for my cardiac arrest, anyone who's been close to death. It's changed me massively. I've been asked by the NHS to come and give talks at some of the hospitals. They asked me, if you could, Ray, how would you help near-death survivors? And I said, you need a Ray in every hospital. We need this. People are coming back and they feel so isolated. So out of all of this, a paramedic came up to me and he said, you might be interested in studying. So over the last few years since I've seen you, Amit, I've become a psychotherapist, and my specialist field now is to do with the near-death experience. So it's given me a greater insight into the understanding of God. I now believe that He controls my destiny. And to hand myself over to Him has been just profound, to be honest with you. And I've been guided to this point.
And it's good that you say that, is that the words you just said there, hand myself over to God. And it's very important, once you've had this experience, that you've learned that actually God is always in control.
Yes, yeah.
And the secret is obviously to surrender.
Yes.
So to our viewers out there who have had not this experience, what's your best advice to them on how to surrender?
You need to listen. I know it's it's just a glib answer, but it's very hard to listen. You need those affirmations, those confirmations of, this is the right thing that you're doing. So that would probably be the most important thing that I'd say to you. I would also say that seek me out. Seek me out on if it's okay to say, on Facebook. You can find me at Raymond O'Brien, VNDE UK. And you can talk to me, because there's very little practical support with this.
Yeah.
And I know that where I'm coming from is a beautiful place because of the guidance that I've been given. So it's a huge question, Amit, and I know we haven't got time to fully answer it, but listen to yourself. Listen to yourself.
Well, listen, we're going to take a small break. Don't go too far, because when we come back, we're going to talk about how Ray and his experiences has changed his life and how he can add value to you guys at home.
Sure, for sure.
See you shortly. Welcome back to the show Between Two Worlds, where we are joined today by a very special guest, Raymond O'Brien, who was just talking to us just before the break about his second experience that he had in the physical, over the physical plane into the astral planes. And welcome back onto the show.
Thank you, Amit.
So my next question to you, Ray, is how does it feel to be between two worlds?
That's an amazing question. And I wish I had hours to explain it to you. At first it felt very isolating, felt massively isolated. It took me a long time to come to terms with what had happened to me. I encountered a lot of skepticism. Probably one of the things that scared me the most was, I know I mentioned it to you earlier, was handing myself over to God for my guidance. It's been an incredible journey. It's been beautiful to learn more about myself. But what's so beautiful about this is what I'm able to give back. And that is something which I didn't really expect. To help other survivors who I know are really suffering. Because I'm much more educated now on a clinical side. I'm in that beautiful position now to be between two worlds and to be able to flick-flack between the two. It's wonderful to speak to spiritually minded people. I get such a thrill out of that. And the other side of it is to also be able to speak to doctors on a clinical level about how this affects us on a daily basis.
And what are the doctors' opinions of this when you speak to them? Because obviously you're working in the NHS, what is their opinion?
Well, I deliberately took the work at the NHS. I did 18 months on a chemo unit, and I knew that I was wide open for skepticism. But it never came, Amit. It never came. They gave me a little tiny room. It was the little chapel on this chemo unit. And before I knew it, I had a little queue outside the door.
Wow.
And what was the most beautiful thing to me was a lady who didn't have very much long to live. She sat next to me. She said, I don't know what it is, Ray, but when I sit next to you, the pain stops. And I started to hear that more often. And that inspired me to carry on. So the doctors, to be honest with you, I can't go into it, but when I was operated on, I was actually asked by one of the consultants. He mentioned about my experiences. You've been frightening my nurses, Ray, and da-da-da. But he asked me what was wrong with him. And I asked him, did he know? So we're in the operating theatre and I've picked out a few things on him, and he said, yeah, that's absolutely correct. So he wasn't sceptical. I got wheeled out into the recovery, and one of the nurses asked me, could she be very unprofessional, and asked me if I knew what was wrong with her. And I did. I told her. I also told her that her husband had something wrong with his left knee. She said he's coming in today for an operation on his cartilage on his left knee. So it was, instead of it being picked apart through skepticism, by working in the hospital and listening to the guidance, had given me that courage to face any sort of skepticism. But to be honest with you, Amit, I haven't really had any. I've just had wonderment and encouragement, and I think that's what's kind of kept me going.
Kept you going, then, definitely. So the gift that you have, Ray, and I know you have got a gift because I've seen it on myself, and I've seen it, and I've talked to you, and I've spoken to you before, and I've seen it with my own eyes. Has this gift that you've got been more exploited since having the experience in the astral plane?
I lost my mother. I lost my mother through Alzheimer's, stroke, dementia, and since she passed, that was really
I felt turning point.
Yes,
that was a turning point.
It was a massive turning point.
So, did you know you had the gift before then?
Yes.
That you could actually sense
yeah.
illnesses in people.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
But you haven't really touched upon it until your mother passed.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's always been there. It's always been, but I never took it seriously. For Ray, it was always a little bit of a party trick, but there was no structure to it. There was no direction. It was, you know, people say, "What's wrong with me, Ray?" And you know, I'd maybe point something out. I think how I used to play with it is I was sent a picture of a woman on a horse, and she wanted to know what was wrong with the horse from this picture. So I looked at it, I told her what was wrong with the horse. But not only did I tell her what was wrong with the horse, I also told them medical history of the person who was on the horse, and I was correct.
Wow.
So it was that sort of wonderment, really, to be
I need
honest.
to share, because you shared a story with me about the lady who had cancer.
Yeah.
Can you share that story with the viewers, please?
Yes. I can't go into details because obviously...
Confidentiality.
But I was asked, what are you going to do now that you can't do your work anymore? And that was a profound thing for me. I was a qualified heating and plumbing technician. I was happy with what I was doing. So to hear somebody say that to me was it really moved me a lot, to be honest with you, to such a degree that I panicked. And I explained to the person that I would like to rent a room here in the hospital, explain briefly about my mother. And I was asked by this person, do I see cancer? And my answer back was yes to that. I explained where it was. I explained the size of it.
Because you said it was 1 millimetre.
It was 1 million size. Person corrected me on it. Told me that it was a little bit bigger than that because it had been measured. And did I still want to work on the unit? And I said, yes, please. So that person has helped me so much, but I don't think they realised the amount that they have really helped me. It really was. If I couldn't see then I would never see.
No.
So that's what kind of led me into that.
Yeah. Now I always like to ask all my guests this question.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, Ray, having had this experience and
Yeah.
had been gifted to see the planes above and then to come back down and to tell us a story, in your opinion, what do you feel the purpose of life is?
To help others, to listen to the guidance that we're given. I know it's hard. Some of us don't have a lot of time when we get home. You know, it's some of us have families. All I could really say to you with that, Amit, is we need to listen more to ourselves. And again, it's such a glib, off-the-cuff answer, but there's a lot to that. That's just the shop window kind of stuff. But for everything else, we need to listen to ourselves, and that is really what I've learned. The most beautiful thing, and I can't even believe I hear myself say this, but I can't deny it, Amit, is my beliefs that I have brought me to this position. In actual fact, and I've told you this, I was told by God to contact you.
I know, yes, yeah.
And I sat there and I was very concerned. I thought, oh my gosh, Amit might take this the wrong way, but just go ahead and do it. And I was stunned when you contacted me.
I was glad to hear from you, Ray.
Oh, that was beautiful to hear, to be honest.
I was really glad to hear from you. So, let's just take it from the viewer's point of view.
Yeah.
I'm a busy person, I'm working, I'm married, I've got kids, and I'm trying to pay the bills. How does then one still themselves to then listen to that voice and that guidance? What is your opinion on that?
We need to leave time for it. I would say with you, Amit, you're probably a perfect example. Since we've been doing this, your phone has been non-stop and you've been doing everything else. But you need to discipline yourself. You need to leave that time. I believe we have a connection here. I know we can't see our cameraman, but the connection between the three of us in this room, I just wish the viewers were here to feel that.
Yeah.
So it's leaving time to practice listening. And it's like if I'm going to play guitar, I do play guitar and I practice probably 2 hours a night. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be any good at what I do. And this is the exact same process. We need to sit down and listen. Many of us don't know. It's not, we don't have to run along a beach and bang a drum or anything like that. It's very, very, very simple. But we need to practice about how we do that. And if I can give guidance on that, I most certainly will.
Wow. So, in your opinion, is to then, you know, to strike that balance between the worldly life and the spiritual life,
Yes.
by spending time listening,
Yes.
meditating even?
Very much so. Meditating is an incredible pathway to understanding who you are. That's very much so.
And just for our viewers out there, how do you meditate? What was the best way to the method to meditate, and what, you know, just some guidance?
There's many different ways. For me, a great tool that I use is the guitar, or I ride a motorcycle. That's another way for me to meditate. Quite often, if I'm wandering around, I'll be meditating, or I'll just use the 3 S's: the stillness, the silence, and the solitude.
I like that.
I
like that.
It's such a beautiful way to, and again, it's
Say that again.
The 3 S's: stillness, silence, and solitude.
Right. So thank you for that, Ray, for coming onto the show
You're
today.
welcome.
Tell the viewers how they get in contact with you.
You can contact me on Facebook. It's Raymond O'Brien, VNDE UK. So if you want to ask me any questions, or you follow the link below on Instagram. We're on Instagram, Amit and I. And also, you can always follow us on YouTube as well, The Amit Kainth Show. So that's how you can contact with us.
Thank you very much, Ray. It's been a pleasure having you.
Pleasure, thank you.
I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Take care, viewers. Thank you.